So about the whole only using outlines thing.
Lastly, these videos might sound scripted. It's not that I haven't. In fact, I did with this first part, but as it so happens, I will be only writing down an outline from here on out in this video.
I guess I'm a liar. So I'm doing a full-on script this time because I'm going to try it at least. I didn't lie that I only used an outline last video, but for this one I will be, just to throw that out there. First things first, if you haven't watched the first video, well, I guess you don't have to watch it because it doesn't actually matter for this one, but it might matter for context. You see, for those of you who haven't watched it, this is the second part to my commentary on Drawingfandom, a YouTuber who made a how-to on making characters that was extremely close-minded. However, in this video I'll be covering her new video, the remade edition. You heard me, edition. So like, you remade the edition from the first video? Meaning you made another video to add to the first one? Where is it? Or did you mean addition, meaning a different form of something? These words do mean two different things, and you could argue that it was an addition to the first video, but then the remade part wouldn't make sense, as remade means to make something again. In this case, it's safe to assume you should have used addition like I explained. We're not even in the video yet and there's already problems. I must admit this version is much better than the last one. However, there are still some things to go over, or else I wouldn't have covered this video in the first place. Now, without further ado, let's get into the commentary.
Okay, so last time I dealt with this topic, it went poorly. I will not be making another sorry excuse for a video like that again.
Oh, let's hope so. Also, what's with the aspect ratio? Like, I know you explained later that you used an iPad to make this video, but seriously, the aspect ratio was at least decent in the last one, albeit it fluctuated since you didn't think to correct it, but at least fit the screen better than this thing. I suppose this hashtag Black Borders Matter point some commentators use could apply here, but what's the fun in using other commentators' hashtags? How about hashtag fix your aspect ratio? No? Okay then. The point is that aspect ratio is presentation, so it's important. YouTube's recommended aspect ratio are high definition, which is 720p and 1080p. Both of these are horizontal. Yours would more suit a phone vertically rather than YouTube's platform.
Even though yes, some of my other videos have poor filming quality, that simply can't be fixed since I film on my iPad.
Then record on your computer, unless you don't have one. If you can't fit the recommended aspect ratio, then save up the money for a nice computer and editing software. Heck, any Mac computer comes with iMovie and QuickTime, which are decent in their own right. That's what I'm using actually. Windows computers also have their own set of recording and editing applications, so if you have either of these computers, you're golden. If you don't, like I said, save up the money for one so you can make your quality better.
But that's not where I went wrong with that video. I just simply said stuff in that video that wasn't fully explained, making it look like I only felt one way when it was quite the opposite. Not to mention, like 1 million people in the comments told me off.
There wasn't 1 million, you're exaggerating. There was a lot, yes, but it wasn't exactly 1 million. This aside for a second, do I really have to repeat myself though? Aspect ratio is presentation. If your aspect ratio is shit, your video is only going to be as good as that shit aspect ratio. Put in shit, get back shit. This applies here. Back to the first point, there were a lot of people saying what was wrong with the video. And like I said in my first video, I have the receipts. Currently being shown on screen are the many comments I managed to screenshot before the video went down. One of them is mine, and that's what I'm going to cover. So to make this short, I basically argued some of the arguments from my last video, like using absolutes, saying tropes are bad, giving examples of these said tropes and right, not to mention the misuse of words and acting like you know what the words or phrase meant. I also said it was important to say good things about characters as well, since being negative in a video like this is unwise to say the least. The comment wasn't intentioned, even though it might have sounded a little harsh despite explaining I just wanted to help improve her videos. However, Drawingfandom apparently just wanted to repeat herself from the video and retaliated with,
That's the case, why do it half the time? The idea of parents' death brings nothing new to the table. If you can do it and bring something new to the gavel, go ahead, but we don't need another 5 OCs with parent death unless each one can bring new aspect to that idea. Otherwise, it's boring!
Well, shit, if that ain't a fucking run-on sentence that barely made sense. This is what I replied with. You misunderstand what I mean. I wasn't defending those who use it as a way to make people feel bad for the characters and have no real reason behind it. I'm defending those who use it as a plot point, so that it furthers the story. I'm saying that telling people not to do it absolutely is not okay. It's one thing to critique a character who has dead parents just to use it, but it's another when you totally disregard the characters who use them for actual plot. Did you not read my entire comment? I didn't just cover one thing, and I am clearly explaining why I think it's better not to use absolutes like absolutely don't do this or absolutely don't do that. There are many exceptions to your argument. Also, punctuation and grammar, please. You stress that grammar is important, but you don't seem to do it yourself. And then I proceed to fix her comment and repeat that I didn't want to come off as rude. I never got a reply after that, so that entire thing was over. My point is that you disregarded people's critiques by giving yourself an excuse. A lot of them were just trying to be constructive, while a couple looked like they were just trolling, but you just gave excuse after excuse when people tried to help you. Saying we told you off isn't exactly accurate, as it just sounds like you're trying to make yourself a victim.
In this video, I will try to remember the things you commenters have told me and look on both sides of the aspect, whereas in the last video, I was being very one-sided to each OC issue. I will also be using my OCs for example, so for anyone thinking that there is nothing I would say bad about my OCs, so this does not count, and I'll be one-sided to only look at how great my OCs are. No, I will not. If I do happen to say my OCs are good, a lot, great. That's not because I want everyone to think my OCs are so great and love them.
I feel like using your own characters is just an easy way out of doing research. I think it's also unwise to use your own characters to critique because there is a personal bias. While watching this video, I didn't exactly hear anything bad about them as characters. May I remind you that character design and the art of the character are two different things. Remember this, we'll be getting back to it later.
That's not the point of this video. I'm using my OCs because first off, people in the last comments of my last video told me I should.
I don't think they told you to use your own character specifically, they just told you to do research.
Second off, they're my OCs. I can't mess up their backstory because I know every aspect of their backstory, as they're my OCs. Whereas in my last video, I messed up a lot of people's OC backstories, not knowing enough about them or the fandom they were in. I also want to quickly say I'm sorry for anyone I offended with my other video. That was not my intention at all to offend you or steal people's art or anything else I was negatively accused for. I hope this video can rightfully make up for that video. Lastly, before getting into the video, I want to say I will leave the other video up for now, simply so you can have an example of my failure and really judge how much of a better video this should be in comparison. Maybe, in turn, learn from my mistakes and not do what I did in that video itself.
And here's the reason why I'm doing this video. Yes, she does say for now, but how long is for now? Is it a month? A year? Obviously it was in the time frame of 5 months, but still. I don't understand the idea of keeping a video up despite wanting to take it down. You could argue that she could update her social media like Twitter or Instagram, but she doesn't link her social on her YouTube, and I don't see any updates on her Instagram, so I find fault in this statement. I'd also like to point out that new people watching this video won't know what you're talking about because you referenced the video in this introduction, but there's no video to be seen.
How to make a good OC? More like how to make a good video on OCs. Am I right? No? Okay. Well, lastly, I want to say, if this video gets lengthy, that's because I will be going into mass detail with my points, handling every aspect of it in great detail. And anything I do leave out, I either didn't think of at the time or didn't even know could be an aspect of something. Hopefully, all art should belong to me this time too, but any other images that are not art do not belong to me, and I will credit the owner if possible in the description. So without further ado, I bring you How to Make a Good OC versus Bad OC, the proper way video.
So I would skip this, but there's some inconsistency issues that are important for later. So keep this in the back of your mind as I'll be coming back to it.
Ta-da! Now, in my last video I talked about having bases, and now, using bases can be a bad thing. I still strongly believe using bases is not okay. I have never really used a base before. Why I don't believe you should use bases. First off, it's not your own art, and so most of the time it becomes easy to tell when a base is being used, as your art and unique style of drawing will not match up with the base. People in my last video in the comments asked if it was okay to use bases if it's just to point out a style or design, or for shading. Yes, it can be okay if you're very low-key about it, and don't do it often. However, personally, I still wouldn't recommend it, being a growing artist myself.
However, for people who can't draw but want to get their character down, bases are a great tool. This didn't really change from the last video. The mindset was fixed, although there is some inconsistency here. However, I still stand by my bases being templates point. Bases, like I explained before, are artist templates, or like a doll if you will. Pairing artists who have these to give them for free. They just ask to credit them for the base. Now, while I'm not saying that people always credit the base maker, they might not, and that's shitty. However, bases are a free-to-use tool for beginning artists or non-artists who want a visual for their characters if they don't have the money to commission an artist or just want to do it themselves without spending the time to improve on their own. For beginning artists who are new to digital art, bases are a nice tool to improve hair and clothes while also getting the feel of drawing digitally. You kind of say this in the next part I'm going to skip because I'd just be repeating myself, but then you try to justify yourself by saying just sketch it out yourself. Well, the point is that bases act as a quicker way to do that. That doesn't mean they aren't improving. Like last video, I said that I used bases when I was just starting out and I drew on paper with a pencil. A physical tool set that I used to improve myself without the help of a base. A digital tool. You could also just use them for posing like a reference, which you do agree with from the last video, as well as saying that some people might just do it for fun and that's cool. But now I'd just be going on a tangent. My point is that bases aren't bad, they can be helpful, although there is only so much you can do with a base. They're tools, not actual art, and I still stand by the point that bases and improving your art belong in a different video. Remember, this video is how to make a character, not how to improve your art.
For EuroC, try to make them creative and really excel in story, because lots of times I find with anything, story can matter more than visual appearance even. A great example I can think of is the Instagrammer GF_mystery_gang. I'll try to remember to put her in the description, but she uses bases for her OCs, yet I still like them as she is a great writer who does well with story writing them. So that is all for bases.
You misspelled character again! And technically. You misspelled technically. And what does that say? Well, technically she edits GF characters, but still what? That's not a base, that's screenshot editing. It's basically like recolors. Unless you mean screenshot redraws? Even so, that's still different from bases. I will never know because her Instagram is private. Although, in this context, what is GF? Is it girlfriend? I know you probably meant Gravity Falls, but how is the viewer supposed to know that? If the viewer doesn't know what the show Gravity Falls is and you don't explain what you mean by GF, when you search GF you get the definition of the abbreviation of girlfriend. Either edit in another audio clip of you saying that, or spell out Gravity Falls because this can get lost in translation.
Now, that pretty much sums up my own thoughts or opinions on bases, edits, or recolors. I know I mostly use the word base, but I think edits and recolors are along the same lines, to not need to restate myself to talk separately about those like in my last video.
Actually, bases and recolors are different. Recolors are basically a character someone colored over with MS Paint or another editing software like Photoshop. You aren't really drawing anything like you do with bases. Bases, most of the time, you have to draw the hair and clothes, and if you want to change the eye color and skin tone, you can. Recolors aren't templates like bases are. Recoloring is actual art theft, and you shouldn't do it at all. It's plagiarism. However, it's good to know you're at least thinking about the length of your video and taking out things you think are redundant or unneeded.
I now want to talk about colors and accessories/outfit. I said in my last video, your colors should not look like eye-bleeding colors, and you should only have 5 colors and 4 or so accessory traits. I retract that statement. I did believe that until you people in the comments made some valid points that made me see otherwise. Now I have a better take on it. First off, I'll talk about your color choices before going on about the amount of colors. Your color choices for your OC should reflect something about them, but also go together.
Not always. Like I said in my last video, the colors that you use for your character don't have to fit them personality-wise. Yes, shows like Voltron Legendary Defender will color coordinate and it's not a bad thing, but it's perfectly fine to go against that. They just have to make sense. You could argue that's what you meant, and you kind of do it in the next point, but here, to me, it sounds like you're just trying to rephrase your last statement from last video.
For example, my OC Gibson is an emo, so I gave him colors generally associated with an emo. Black and red with hints of blue, so that the black and red didn't seem overpowering. But the colors you picked don't always have to show off your OC's personality. Maybe you just chose that color because it's your OC's favorite color. Or maybe let's go even more in depth. Let's say, for example, your OC always wanted to fit in with the cool crowd. So he acted like a cool kid, someone they simply weren't. In which case, you can have their colors or outfit and even accessories flaunt off the fake personality and let their true blue colors shine through in story. Pacifica from Gravity Falls is a great example of this. She was raised and forced by her parents to dress and be a rich Little Miss Perfect, so her outfit reflected that. Whatever the case, the colors and or outfit should reflect something about your OCs, whether it's their true blue colors or the fake self. Because if you really think about it, your OC's clothes and colors and even accessories are a choice that they make to wear.
It it isn't just limited to that. It could also be practical use, like say they wear leather because they drive a motorcycle, or they wear thick jackets because they live in a colder climate. These are examples of practicality, not exactly reflecting their fake personality as you put it. Things such as armor and overwear are trivial things. These things a character may wear doesn't necessarily think about style, but they need to wear them because of what conditions they're faced with, those conditions being different climates or the world in general. Another example could be a uniform if they go to a private school. The uniform doesn't necessarily match the character, but it works in a sense that it fits the situation. The same goes for armor. They may not necessarily enjoy the armor, but they need to wear it because they have to fight in it because they may love their country or kingdom and want to defend it. And you could argue that this isn't pertaining to color, but leather only has so many colors to it. The same goes for a uniform and armor. It's limited to the colors of its school or kingdom. Story is just as important as color coordination here, and it's a wise decision to have this in mind while developing a character.
All choices have a reason. Find out the reason to why your OCs wear what they wear, and that in itself is telling you something about your OCs and reflecting something about them, real or fake. Now, let's talk about the colors themselves, as I strayed from this topic a bit.
This is what we call a tangent. And this one was pretty long, a full minute on what you call a different topic. Color and character design do correlate, and to be honest, you could have merged the topics together like I was explaining before. However, it is a little lazy by the sounds of how you couldn't retake or edit this out. This makes me think you didn't really put much more effort than the last video.
The colors you pick for your OC should go together. For example, take a look at my OC Nick here. He wears a blue hoodie with a bit of black at the neck collar part, and has brown hair. This works because black, blue, and brown are neutral colors that are going to go together.
Blue isn't a neutral color, it has saturation. Brown and black are neutral colors, but blue is on the color wheel. It's a primary color. Any neutral color will go with any color. That's why black will go with everything, because there's no clashing colors to go against the one you're using. You could call this a nitpick, but there's also purple, red, orange, and yellow on the hat. And while he might not wear that hat all the time, the example shows him wearing the hat, so I don't know why you didn't point those colors out as well. Blue, purple, red, orange, and yellow do go together. This is considered an analogous color palette, as they sit next to each other on the color wheel. I personally find this color palette boring since they sit next to each other and obviously go together, but it is a color palette that works.
Also notice how all the colors on Nick are at the same saturation. If the blue on Nick was super bright and the hair was not, that could be hard to look at, as the blue might be too oversaturated to the eye.
That's not exactly a good thing. I go to a graphic design school, and what they teach us in first year is that working with grayscale first can have its advantages. Grayscale allows you to black out the values in your art piece. This means it differentiates between the lights and the darks. It gives variation and allows someone to look at it and determine this is their hat or this is their hair without any problem. I actually like to see the values of your character in Photoshop, and well, this is flat. Now, I also put one of my own characters into Photoshop and put it into grayscale as well. Although this isn't the best, I admit that, it is better than your example. You can tell where things are here without having to look as hard as you would with yours. This is called contrast, and contrast is good. Contrast allows hierarchy, which indicates where you want the viewer's eye to go first. When I look at yours, the only thing I notice is the face. The hat and the hair merge together, and the shirt isn't much lighter. You could argue that this is a good thing because it frames the face, but it looks like a mess of shape surrounding your character. Although I do admit that you're very limited with the colors you have since you work traditionally, but the point is flawed to say the least. Having everything desaturated in the same way can damage the effectiveness of your art piece, and having that mindset won't get you any further than the flat image that you have.
If you are unsure of what colors go together, there are lots of ways to find great color schemes. You can always search up color schemes online and find some great ones, or search up the color wheel. Use it for reference. Look at videos on color theory, or let's say you absolutely know you want your OC to have this one color, but are unsure of what colors go with it. Go with the color you want. Simply search up the color, say it's red, search up what colors go with red, and a list of colors pop up as the first search. I have tried it. It will even briefly explain why those colors work with red. It's that simple.
So an even easier way to do this is to go to color.adobe.com. This is a free resource online that you can use to find exactly what you're looking for. I pointed this out in my last video, but I thought it best to repeat this since it's extremely handy. I also didn't mention that if you have the Adobe Creative Suite, it comes with it, and you can even save your color palettes through it too. Adobe, sponsor me, please.
Now, let's talk about how many colors your OC can have. I want to stress something now that I didn't realize before. It's okay for your OC to have as many colors as they want, as long as it makes sense for your OC. Take a look at my OC Sadie. She wears quite a bit of color. It might not all go together, but it makes sense for her to wear quite a bit of color, as she's a fashionable emo, and likes to express herself through fashion. She might not even look much like an emo. That's okay. She acts more like one than she looks.
Fashionable emo scene kid!
Again, meaning though her outfit still says something about her, it's not necessarily her directly stereotyped personality shown off through her outfit. With that being said, it's personality that determines how many colors your OC should have.
What I say, we don't always necessarily have to apply color that matches their personality, now do we? Jokes aside, this is just repeating yourself from several points ago. You don't need to repeat it as you already have a full minute explaining this.
Now, the other factors I said that matter to how many colors your OC wears is purpose. Try to think of what you're using your OC for. If it's just for illustration, go ahead and draw them with all the colors needed. However, if you were using your OC for, say, animations, try for a simplistic design and color palette, as that's usually ideal for animation. Unless, of course, you're like Gravity Falls and have a whole team of animators. But even Gravity Falls has a simplistic cartoon design. Same with comics. You might want a simplistic design if you're using your OC for a comic, as redrawing a really detailed OC a million times will take forever, and it's probably no fun. At least it doesn't sound like it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you over all these comic book examples. Comics aren't simple in their art. They go in extreme detail because that's just the nature of the fucking thing. Manga, sure, but this is technically a different format than comics, as the Japanese format is different from the American comic format. Now I know that point is technically color, but she said design. I don't know about you, but comics can go into extreme detail at times. Another example is the one I used last video, Yu-Gi-Oh! They have to animate the monsters, yet they still look almost dead on to the actual cards in real life. This is mostly because the monsters don't really move all that drastically unless attacking, but you still get my point. Real life examples show that it's not impossible to animate something intricate or to draw a full comic in the same detailed way. You just have to work hard for it. Sure, making things simple can be easier, but what's the fun in that? This is where the inconsistency issue comes to play as well. You said if you didn't cover something, it would be because you didn't think of it at the time or didn't even know it existed. But here you clearly say you weren't going to cover a point you did think of, and I'm nitpicking a bit.
Now, accessories. I strongly believe accessories work the same as colors. You can make your OC wear as many or as little as you want, as long as it fits their personality. Take my OC Mike, for example. His one most important accessory is his large cross necklace. He wears it because he loves rap, and rappers usually wear big gold chain necklaces, so he wanted to wear one too, being an inspiring rapper himself. See, it makes sense, which is all that matters. However, one thing I would recommend is, if you're going for an OC that wears a lot of accessories, for whatever reason, you make one or two big ones, and the rest smaller, so the big ones don't overpower or cover up the rest of the OC. But you don't have to. So that's really it for your color, clothes, design of the OC, or anything relating to that I brought up.
So I don't understand why it's a cross. At least you don't explain it. Is he religious, or is there a specific rapper he's trying to imitate? These can be important factors as well, as the typical rapper necklace tends to be a dollar sign or just a golden chain. I do agree that making sure the accessories make sense, but there's some inconsistency here. It doesn't seem like you've put much thought in why he wears a cross, besides he likes rappers, despite saying you should do a lot of thinking. Sometimes it's beneficial to go even deeper to find the finer details. For example, I have this character named Jay. He wears this red scarf. Seems pretty simple, right? Where did he get it from? He got it from his cousin who raised him. Well, he has this scarf at the beginning and he's not in a cold climate yet, so why would he wear it now? Because it's a comfort object for his social anxiety. You see, you don't have to stop under one layer of questions. Actually, sometimes it makes more sense to dive even deeper.
Now, let me talk about making an OC that looks too much like an already made character from a fandom X set. This does not only apply to fandom OCs. You can have an original character in your own world and universe that strays from any fandoms, yet they could still look a lot like, say, Dipper Pines or Star Butterfly, unintentionally.
First off, you forget Steven Universe characters. As much as it's important to stay clear of existing designs, the Steven Universe characters have to. The world requires it. Second, there are examples between established stories of characters that are similar. Nico D'Angelo from Percy Jackson and Keith Kogane from Voltron Legendary Defender, for example. Technically, they have the same appearance and act similar as well, but no one really cares because they fit a trope that the creators decided to use. Sokka and Lance are another example. They're even from the same creators, and they are shockingly similar. This is an example of a character trope. Sure, they seem identical, but they technically do have their own identities as they have different names and honestly their backgrounds. And you can argue that they're just copying each other, like the next part I'm skipping, but sometimes they've never even seen this character or their series before, and when people point it out, they get a little annoyed because you're accusing them of copying or plagiarizing. I do agree that it is better to stray away from these tropes, but it's not entirely a bad thing to use.
Wise. I would also avoid using overdone plot lines for your OC, unless you have a new point of view, idea, or insight to add, but I will get more into that later on.
I don't see the point in saying this then, if you're just going to cover it later. Sure, in a commentary it's useful because points cross over like my first video when the title card was misspelled, but then later on she talked about proofreading. But here it doesn't make sense since this is a separate point altogether. I suggest leaving comments like this out as it's sort of redundant at this point.
Now, let's talk about plain wrong OCs. OCs used for fetish, mostly. I don't think it's a good idea to have an OC for fetish, like at all. Not even because I am against fetish or that fetish sickens me, but mostly people who enjoy fetish go to look at it because it turns them on or something, and are more interested in the fetish than they ever would be in your OC. You will not have an invested audience for your OC if you use it solely for that. Now, if you don't care about that or don't even care to develop your OC, then go ahead and do that. But if you do care, probably stay away from that. But I will say, having a plain wrong OC can be a good thing. If, say, you want a gory OC for a creepypasta, or know how to use disturbing, horrific, and gross, which done right is an art in and of itself to your advantage with your OC. Just try not to make it super creepy all over, or gross, or horrific all over, just for the sake of being gross and horrific and gory. The gory visuals in your OC should only better the story, not just be there to be there. And you should be passionate and really want to have that kind of OC, or people with a passion for that kind of art will be able to tell you don't care and are just doing it to maybe pander to people who like that, or just because it's popular on the internet and want to do it too.
And here's where she finally explains what plain wrong is. I think you're missing the point of a character like that. If a character is just for porn or for the gore aesthetic, then they're for porn and the gore aesthetic. It's supposed to cater to that. There's also no way to avoid porn of your story once it gets out there. You know, Rule 42. Your story's fan base won't ever be pure of these, since just about every fan base has it. And to be honest, who cares? It's not hurting anybody. Leave those poor fetish artists alone.
Next, which goes into the actual drawing rather than design, but is drawing your OC in dynamic poses. Done.
Stop! Oh my god! Like, what the fuck? Were you picking at your iPad or something? Like, holy shit, dude. Why couldn't you have cut this shit out? Like, I don't want to hear it.
This counts to be in here because really, character design goes into the actual drawing of the character, and I feel so does this.
Breathe, Alex, breathe.
Now, it is important you draw your OC in dynamic poses as it adds a whole extra layer to them. When first creating your OC or drawing them for the first few times, it's perfectly fine to draw them just standing or doing headshots. To get the feel of your OC, get used to drawing them. Then try drawing them in different poses, with their lover, friends, family, doing their hobbies, or otherwise drawing them in a way that portrays your OC. And most times, unless you draw them in a new outfit, drawing them just standing around isn't going to say or emulate something about your OC. This is also helpful if you're looking for someone or some people to be interested in your OCs. Get an OC following.
Listen, Drawing Fandom, you don't have to know how to draw in order to make a character. You can write one too. There is more than one platform to make a character. Do you understand me? Do I need to be more clear? This entire section is about improving your art skill, not improving your character. There is, in fact, a difference. Stop acting like it makes better character. You can write a perfectly good character just as well as drawing them. Not all people who make characters draw. How do you think authors make books? They don't draw them, that's for sure, but they still make characters even though you can't see them on paper. They make it so you can imagine them. And comic book artists aren't authors. Sure, they may write the comic, but they tell the story through art. Authors tell the story through words. This section belongs in how to improve your art video, not a how to make a character video.
Let's move on to the story and bio of OCs, my personal favorite part, because it adds the feeling and care to the character. Let's start off by talking about the bio. Your OC bio is made to be the base of your OC. You shouldn't put tiny little details into the bio that don't matter, as it is designed to give a basic idea of who they are, not made to be a precise description. You can add and or tell people more about your OCs through time and development. I like to think of your bio sort of like this. You have made a new friend who knows nothing about you.
But how did you become friends in the first place? Whatever, continue!
What would be the basic things you tell said friend to give them a general idea of you so you can later become great friends? Obviously, you introduce yourself with names, and you may tell him or her your likes and dislikes, and other basic important information needed for them to understand you on a friend level, or things you feel everyone should know about you, without being too deep. Maybe a little, but not too much, as this is only the first meeting, and you may not be ready to confide in them everything. The same sort of concept can be applied to making an OC bio. Make it simple, but descriptive. Much like meeting a new friend, it's also important to remember to reread and proof-check your bio before posting it, or have a friend or family member do so. If you have a bio with lots of spelling errors, people might not be able to understand it and just plain think it's unimportant, not wanting to waste their time trying and never ending up reading your OC bio, not even giving your OC bio a chance. There's also the possibility people might look at your OC bio filled with spelling errors, and think you're just some cringe kid or newbie to the internet.
I could argue that you're being pretty hypocritical, but what's the fun in that? Who am I kidding? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. You misspelled character, and technically you said era instead of error, drawings instead of drawings, ideas instead of ideas. I'm not even gonna go into how little care you took in making this video. What I'm saying is, practice what you preach. It doesn't invalidate your argument, but it helps in making sure people take you seriously.
Bio, so I'll move on to the next topic. The next topic I want to talk about is OCs, or original characters' backstories, or really the whole idea of a story for any kind of character. Since talking about backstories can be kind of hard for me to do correctly, I did do some research for this one. However, most of the research done was how to write a backstory for a character in a story rather than specifically an OC. But I figure it's all the same because an original character has the same elements as a character in a story. So if you are ever doing research for writing OCs, it does not have to be specifically about OCs or original characters. It can be about writing any kind of character.
I don't quite understand what you're talking about. Doing research for your character tends to be about what aspects you want to apply to them, and certain fandoms require other fields that another might not have. Research is relative, and not everything you research is going to be the same depending on what you're searching for. But that's not your full-on research for the character. Tips are only there to help you look for what you need. I'm skipping this part because, fuck, there is more than just the mysterious Mr. Enter out there, dude. A thing I'd like to point out, though, is that she does admit you can use overused tropes as long as you do them right.
Some of the tips on the backstory I'm going to talk about now are the ones I learned recently through research on this topic. Even though I know I have been talking a lot about writing a story as a whole, I guess these tips are more about writing the backstory and the whole story on the OC. But backstories and the story of a character now go hand in hand. Anyhow, I'll get into the backstory part now. A backstory is designed to explain why your character is who they are now in the present. There really should only be one big, thought-out backstory for important main characters too, not ones for side characters or whatnot. The first step in writing a backstory is to identify its purpose for your OC. Think of it like this. What struggling emotion or problems are your OC going through, and what things in their past might have caused these, or might emphasize or explain their feelings now? Maybe they screwed up in the past gambling all their money away, and now in the present it explains why they're broke, begging on the street for money. The backstory does not always have to set up something that big, which is a life situation. It can simply just explain why something is so important to them, or help better understand why they might be feeling the way they do. It can also show their upbringing and how that could have an impact on who they grew up to be as a person. So long as the backstory serves as a means of furthering an important event or main tone of a character going on in the present of a story with your OCs, it's doing its job. If your characters aren't really in a story, well then you can also use the backstory as a means of explaining something else about them you would call important. Also, the backstory should give the person looking at your OC feelings. Give them a more reason to care about your original characters or feel for them. Further their understanding and your understanding of your OC, and further your OC's development.
Retakes! Can't stress that enough. So far, I've tried to ignore it, but at this point, I can't anymore. Stumbling on your words here makes it hard for people to follow what you're saying. Even I had trouble. To be honest, a lot of this is padding, and you're just repeating the point of cause and effect. The cause and effect being what makes your character who they are currently. It's repetitive and unneeded.
So now you understand the backstory's purpose and job for your OC. And let's say you're ready to start in on the backstory, but don't know where to begin. It can be very helpful to go ahead and write out a timeline for your OC. Depending on their age, the timeline may include the following periods: baby, toddler, adolescent, teen, adult, elder. These can vary though. Only having the timeline go up to the OC's current age, and some points can be taken out. For example, if absolutely nothing of importance happened to them when they were a baby, take out baby entirely. After you write down those key points, start brainstorming what important things happened to them at those times in their life. It can be good or bad things, but try to keep it mostly to things that have an effect on what's going on in your OC's present. But also have fun and add a few other tiny details in there, just so you further and more fully can understand your OC with those kind of less important details. Sometimes even those less important details can show small things about your character that make their presence all the more solid. Just try not to add so many small details that it's to an unneeded cluttered point. They should only be sprinkled into important events like salt.
But I like being salty. Jokes aside, sure, a timeline is useful for backstories. It's sort of the format. I just don't see why you have to drag down this point as long as it has. It's been like a full 4 minutes and you're still going on about the same thing. Maybe a summary is more fitting?
Writing a draft of how you think your OC's character's backstory should look. This is the same idea as writing a rough draft or sloppy copy. You may do or have done for school. Make sure the rough draft has important moments in your character's backstory in it too. Not all backstories have to go all the way back to when your character was a little kid either. If you so wish, you may choose to write a backstory about the events leading up to or prior to his/their present, which may only include the past few months, years, or so on. So long as it tells what it should, and no important key points are left out, the backstory should be immersing and complex, and should be just as well done as the main story, and not just be a boring way to add information about the character for the sake of the plot. Lastly, don't forget to connect the backstory with the main story at the the same time, in some way, shape, or form. After that step is done, all that's left to do is edit and revise, taking out all the things you might not like or may not be needed, spell checking it, all of that. Then you're ready to put it into your story.
Wait, are you still talking about the backstory? Rough drafts? What? Technically, you've already done that with writing out the timeline. This point is redundant as you've already explained it in the previous point. After that, she just rambles in the outro and explains that the other video might be deleted, but I digress. This video wasn't much better. Final thoughts time! Deleting your original video wasn't the best idea, as it's most likely to cover up your tracks and to act like you're a victim of mean comments. You weren't. You just can't take criticism as well as you explained it to be in the new video. Grow a thicker skin. Trying to argue that the art of your character is a part of making a character in general is a moot point. Artists aren't the only people who make characters, so do authors. They write characters, they don't draw them. It's hypocritical to say that you should proofread your bios when you don't do the same for your videos. Next time, make sure the words are spelled correctly. This isn't to say proofreading isn't important, but practice what you preach. People will take you more seriously. While you aren't as closed-minded as you were in the last one, you still have this mentality that you're right about these points and you give excuse after excuse about why. These excuses are moot points and it infuriates me. Using your own characters as examples is a flawed aspect of this video and you didn't even critique them. The only thing you say isn't great is your art, which... tangent time! The necks are too thick, the shoulders are too narrow, your proportions aren't the problem, it's your anatomy. Your art is flat. If this is your character's beard, it fucking goes over his lips, which isn't accurate to real life. Your shading is off, you even lighting, bro. Where are your characters' foreheads? Do they not have brains? And what the fuck is wrong with this cat? Call me harsh, but in 2 years you haven't really improved. I suggest using references and studying the human figure closely, but as it seems you already know this from the tangent you did for posing for not only this video, but the last one as well. I don't need to tell you this, however, I could argue that you should practice what you preach, but I have no evidence that you don't use references, so I'll leave it to speculation. You could also argue that my critique on your art is unfair since I've had at least a decade of progression and you seem to only have a couple years to partake. And I could argue that because of my experience I have more capability to do so, but I digress. Besides that, I barely got who your characters are. All I got was that you have an emo edgelord, an inspiring rapper, and a scene kid. With that in mind, what is their story? Could you not have used their stories to explain your bio point? Or were there flaws in their bios that you realized and you just didn't want to admit it? And sure, you explain you can read about them on your Instagram, but the point of using your characters was to critique/go over them for the use of the video. TLDR, my biggest problem was that you were giving excuses and merged two different topics together despite knowing full well that they were. With that out of the way, it's time to end the video. Hope you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more commentaries like this in the future. If you're interested in my artwork, you can follow me on Instagram at alsnerdart.ncause or my DeviantArt at alexthenerd. You can also find me on Tumblr at aldoesnerdart, which is my personal art blog, and at clanksyanks, which is my vulture blog, as well as Twitter at alexthenerdbird if Instagram and DeviantArt isn't your cup of tea. Anyway, video's gone long enough. See you next time. Later!